Welcome to the Think Small podcast, hypergrowth for small businesses. So, what's slowing you down?
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the Think Small podcast. I'm your host, Denise Steinbring, and today's conversation is a little different from most that we have on the show. Most of our guests are founder or the CEO. Today's guest is the CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, and I want to make the case that for every small business owner listening who thinks marketing is a cost center, this episode might be the one that changes your mind. Because what my guest has built over the last 9 years at a healthcare IT company, starting with a logo, a broken website, and a zero marketing infrastructure, is the company that just sold to Infosys for $465 million. And the marketing engine he built is a significant reason why. Larry Kaiser is the Chief Marketing Officer of Optimum Healthcare IT, now an Infosys company. Optimum is the leading healthcare IT staffing and consulting firm in the country, ranked number one by KLAS, K-L-A-S, the industry's most respected independent vendor rating organization across multiple categories. Larry joined in 2016 when the company had a logo, a website built on 2012 Drupal, and no marketing function. Over 9 years, he built the entire commercial infrastructure, the brand, the content engine, the event strategy, the industry partners with Chime, the KLAS relationship, a podcast called Visionary Voices, and a Costa Rica advisory event this year with a lot of money in that room. Larry has been in healthcare IT for 22 years and has now been through 2 major acquisitions from the inside, so this is going to be a rich conversation. Larry, it's such a pleasure to have you here. Welcome to the Think Small podcast.
Thank you for having me today, Denise. I appreciate it. Looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah. Well, before we get into some of the big questions, I'd love for the audience to understand the career that brought you here. So 22 years in healthcare IT, first at Keen, which was acquired by NTT Data, then 9 years building Optimum's marketing from scratch. So what kept you in one industry for that long, and what did you learn in those first 10 years that made the Optimum chapter possible?
I would say it's dumb luck for staying in the same industry for as long as I have. In 2005, when I joined Keen, the market was kind of in a lull from a marketing job perspective. So I was, doing everybody's fallback, which of course is waiting tables. So quick side note, waiting tables is a great way to build yourself up for a business career for anybody listening. So I joined Keen as the 8th or 9th person on the marketing team as the proposal writer. And it was interesting because while most proposal writers, if you're selling a product, you know what the product is, and it's a single product for the most part in healthcare, and you do it. Well, Keen sold 2 competing electronic health records systems, each built on a different platform. So for every RFP response that I did, I actually did do 2 responses, one for each system. Then, Keen, the healthcare technologies division, was a small little part of a $1 billion organization. And they sold themselves to an Indian-based VC first, who then sold us to NTT Data. And, people got let go, people left, and I just kind of was the person still there hanging out, doing my proposals. And eventually, by the time I left, I was running the marketing department with myself and just basically a marketing assistant. So when I say it was dumb luck, it's probably a bit of a stretch. I'd probably say it was because the RFPs were revenue generating, is why I stuck around the longest of anybody. So, when the opportunity presented itself to join Optimum, the part that was very attractive to me was that I was going to get to build something of my own from the ground up. Mm-hmm. And for an organization to give me that opportunity, I jumped at it. Great leaders at the time, CEO and president, great people, gave me an opportunity. And it was really there that my presence in the industry grew, where people got to know who I was, and I became known, and met the right people who would reference people to me if they had a question about healthcare IT marketing and so forth. So 22 years in, I feel very humbled by my standing in the marketing community through healthcare IT, vendors in place because we're always talking. We have a group that we always, work together, talk together, help us solve problems with each other, learning new things from each other. And it really just became a great community. And healthcare IT changes every day, which kind of keeps it interesting also. So,
Yeah, so maybe for the listening audience, if you could do a quick couple of sentences on what does Optimum IT do, because that's a very broad category, healthcare IT, right? So let's
yeah,
talk about what the business does.
sure. So, Optimum Healthcare IT started 14 years ago, primarily as an Epic staffing shop for the Epic electronic health record system. And then grew from there into various other areas of EHR services. So your training, your activation, your implementation, your strategic direction, IT assessments, and things like that. So that's really where we got our start, and just kind of growing from there. Um, in 2020, uh, leadership really came to understand that we were not going to grow the organization as largely as we want it to be by just doing staffing. So we pivoted. Probably, I would say we were the first to pivot to get also into the digital transformation space, where we started building out a ServiceNow practice and a cloud practice and a security practice and tech transformation from there. So now, when someone like yourself asks me, "What does Optimum do?" We're a professional services firm that we deal with. We basically have three different types of main service lines. Your enterprise application services, which primarily is Epic, but we do a lot. We're a certified Workday partner as well, and we do work with other EHRs other than Epic. The digital transformation space, where we have our ServiceNow and our cloud and our tech transformation and our security practice, and then our uh, staffing area, or workforce management, as we call it, for our staff augmentation, our permanent placement, and our Optimum career path program.
Yeah. So this is a bit of a complex business because of patient privacy laws, right? And all the HIPAA
Yeah.
compliance and all the things that you have to deal with from a regulatory standpoint. What's hard right now? What's happening in the market that makes it hard?
There's a lot of stuff happening in the market, over the last year and a half, and then moving forward, we've had a large number of uh, organizations who have been changing their electronic health record system.
Hmm.
So there were quite a few, probably more than a few, I would say 65 to 75 new implementations on the market that we were bidding on.
Mm.
Um, you have the advent of AI in healthcare, which is always going to be a learning curve.
Mhm.
And then you have, new legislations that have been passed that are really hurting the bottom line of many healthcare organizations. So they're being tasked with reducing their spend.
Mhm.
And then that's, we have a managed services offering that we have. And we just offered a managed services center of excellence in Costa Rica, where, right now we're working to become that single outsourced vendor to help these organizations maintain Epic and so forth.
Okay. And you said there's a lot of vendors bidding on this. Is it a competitive market?
Yeah, the implementation space is relatively competitive.
Okay.
There are probably, I don't know, five vendors that do it well.
Hmm.
So it is competitive. We bid for those, but we work very hard as an organization to build the relationships to get us the at bats, and then to hopefully get deals over the finish line.
Yeah. Well, let's go back to the marketing, building the marketing organization from scratch, because I think that's a great story. You came in at a time when the way that marketing was done was a lot of, word of mouth, relationships, and so forth. So walk us through what it looks like to actually build a marketing organization from scratch. How do you do that in a relationship driven business? And what did you learn about bringing the founder along on a journey that maybe they weren't sure about?
Yeah, so that's a very good question, and probably can talk about that for hours. But yeah, when you come into an organization that has grown, exponentially without any marketing, there is definitely going to be some trepidation of what you do because you don't want to break what's not broken, right? So, the first thing for me to come into an organization like Optimum in its fourth year, is to really sit down and do a situation analysis, right? Your typical SWOT analysis, where you can identify the strengths that they have going on, you understand the weaknesses and the opportunities and the threats, right? So that was the first thing I went through. At the time, Optimum was ranked among the top two Epic consulting vendors overall by class. Had strong leadership, had the expertise, was obviously a growth company, and we're probably projected in 2016 about, I don't know, about 100 million in revenue, and that was without any marketing. But at the same time, we had fallen behind with content. There was no established marketing. We weren't considered a thought leader. We weren't leveraging our successes. And the ultimate question, did people know who we were?
Right.
So that was the first thing, is really to understand what you're walking into, understand who your audience is. And then, I had four main goals. And I think, I'm not saying these are, my specific four goals. I would say these are very standard goals, right? We want to strengthen your brand position. You want to fuel demand and lead generation. You want to promote thought leadership. And you want to educate your employees, because in the end, everybody's a salesperson for your organization, no matter what your position is.
That's right.
Right. So once I went through the SWOT analysis, once I looked at and understood the strengths and the weaknesses mainly, and then understood here's everything that I want to do, right? Website, collateral, events, social media, lead generation, press releases, philanthropy, thought leadership, advertising, RFPs, case studies, analysts, employee operations, and just overall marketing operations. It's a lot to think about, right? So you have to really put in then what is immediate need, what's intermediary lead, and what is a down the road type of need. So I went through all of that, and in the grand scheme of things, your digital marketing or your website and your content really needed to be number one overall. So the first thing we did was get a new website up on a current platform like WordPress, and then look at all that content and start putting it together in a way in which can be consumed by someone visiting your site and learning about it. So it was your standard, it was your SMART strategy, right? Specific, measurable, actionable, relevant, and time bound, right? Those are your typical things. So we needed to equip, engage, and enhance. And we put all that stuff together, and we just started a meticulous process of putting together each step, piece by piece by piece. And once the domino fell on a website, then we knew the next couple would come after, right? Once we had collateral, and then we can do other things that way. And then we had the events, and we start building up these industry partnerships. It all just it took solid 18 months, I think, before almost everything was done. And I would even say we updated our logo on the company's 10th anniversary.
Oh, wow.
So by that point, it was the only thing marketing hadn't touched was that logo. So, and of course, every single day you're reviewing all of this stuff. Here we are, I'll be here 10 years next week, and every single week we're looking at everything that we're doing. And I have a philosophy: every 18 months you have to touch your brand, make a tweak, make something different. And so it's a process, as you know. So that 18 months for everything to really get up and going, but it's also a daily, weekly review, even 10 years in, to see how things are going and make tweaks and be better at stuff.
Yeah, and especially in light of AI, right? AI has
Yeah,
changed how consumers and customers find you, right? They're not necessarily going to your website, they're taking the answer that Google gives them, right? So it's really
exactly.
important at this point to start looking at some of that.
Yeah, I mean, you have to build. You're not building SEO anymore, for example. You're building GEO for the LLMs.
Yeah, exactly. Gosh, I could talk to you about this for hours. Um, let's go to another question on the brand. So, you were very well known as the best Epic implementation partner in the country, but then you started expanding into ServiceNow and Workday and cloud markets where you're a newer entrant competing against much larger and more established players. So that's a difficult brand positioning problem. How did you expand your brand without diluting it? And how do you convince a market that's trusted you for one thing to trust you with something different?
Well, it surprisingly wasn't that hard. You know, um, in healthcare IT, things tend to move relatively slow. So there's a lot of bureaucratic red tape at these healthcare organizations. It's not just the single person; it's a committee and it's governance and all sorts of stuff these days, right? So, um, so as a industry ranked organization offering some new services, um, they were done strategically because Epic had established itself, for example, as the main EHR on the market for larger health systems, right? And then they're bringing in these other platforms that help them go further into the patient experience, whether that is um, like ERP, again, ServiceNow and ticketing and so forth. And they're bringing in these new technologies that historically at the time really weren't in healthcare. So as these other technologies are working their way into healthcare, we started rolling out services to support them. So it wasn't simultaneous, right? Because there were still people out there. But like we were the first vendor in our consulting area to roll out a ServiceNow practice, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So by the time our competitors started doing it, we were already voted on by ServiceNow as the healthcare partner of the year, right? So we already moved so fast through there. But really, when all of this ultimately started was there was a period of time many, many moons ago where the term in the industry was called best of breed. So, as a healthcare provider organization, you could go to Epic and say, I just want to buy your clinical applications, and I'm going to use the revenue cycle management applications from this other vendor right there. So, at some point along the way, and I forget what year it was, I apologize, Epic finally said, if you're going to buy our clinicals, you have to buy our financials.
Okay.
Right. And that was kind of the end of the best of breed era. So then what you started seeing, and it's really taken shape probably the last 2 to 3 years, is really a platforming, right? A healthcare organization picks their EHR platform, picks their ERP platform, and picks their ticket automation platform at ServiceNow for the most part. And then they innovate off of that. So as an organization now, as we roll these things out and as things are moving, like for example, things are moving to the cloud, we now support all those different platforms, which are the majority of the ones these organizations are taking. So that was a methodical process we went through to start offering those things, and we've positioned ourselves very well. We are the go-to vendor for Epic in the cloud on AWS. We are the healthcare partner of the year with ServiceNow 2 years running, 25 and 26. And we recently, a couple of years ago, got our Workday staffing certification, and now we can do the services as well. So it wasn't complicated to not dilute because we simply just started rolling out the content, the thought leadership, and we're able to get into several organizations and then promote those successes without much issue.
Yeah.
And that really allowed us to grow at a good pace to keep up with the technologies that are working their way into these organizations. Then, of course, you work with those partners in various campaigns and so forth, and you educate them what you can do. And then all of a sudden you're working together and you grow faster. So there really wasn't much of a dilution. The industry was really asking for the one throat to choke methodology of, I want one vendor in here to do everything. So it was stressful, don't get me wrong, from a marketing perspective, but it did not at no point did it hurt us in any way. We just expanded the brand very slowly as we were, I would say the brand probably followed the work. Once we had a successful something with one of those new platforms, then we started rolling out that content and we could promote that success. And then it kind of all just kind of came together very nicely.
So I think I heard you say two things, right? I think having the first mover advantage was probably the thing that, got you ahead of your competition, right? So I think that's
100%.
an
Yep.
important lesson. And then secondly, it sounds like a land and expand type of approach, right? You are already in some of these accounts with Epic, and then to deploy some of these other things gave you the credibility, the case
Mhm.
studies, that then you could take to new clients. Is that what I heard you say?
That is exactly what I said.
Okay.
You just put it a little bit more eloquently than I did.
No worries. So maybe for, for a founder in any relationship driven B2B business, what is the actual alternative to cold outreach? Because you mentioned that doesn't really work in your industry. So what advice would you have for people, and how do you build it systematically?
Yeah, I wouldn't say cold outreach doesn't work, right? What I would get a little bit more specific and say email doesn't work.
Okay.
Email marketing and healthcare IT is just something that's been shunned.
Okay.
Obviously you have a great platform in LinkedIn where everybody lives for work and there's a lot of outreach that way. And of course, you're going to make some cold phone calls, but ultimately, as you said, it is a relationship driven industry. We work very, very hard to build those relationships, and then once you have those relationships built, it's not uncommon to ask them to make an introduction for you, especially if you've done work for them and that work was successful.
Hmm.
So, we we work extremely hard to be the relationship, and it's not just a relationship with the individual, with the healthcare leaders. It's the relationships with the industry associations and groups and organizations and so forth. Because you said something, and I honestly, you can probably go back to any podcast I've done in the last 2.5, 3 years, probably, and I always say this, but the industry that we're in is tagged as B2B, right? Optimum Healthcare IT is selling services to hospital A, right? But at a more granular level, we're actually B2C because my marketing, our relationships start at an individual level, whether that's the CIO or a director of training or whatever it may be. So we have to first market to individuals who then, if we build a solid relationship and are telling them what they want to hear and we can offer them what they need, then they help us to bring it to the whole organization.
Yeah.
So we're actually a B2C and B2B.
Hmm.
And that's why the relationships are so very important. And we definitely have some amazing relationship builders within Optimum, and we do an extremely good job of building relationships.
Yeah, I
So
think I think that's another interesting way to frame it, right? Because most companies talk about business development. You're talking about relationship development.
yep.
And if you do relationship development well, the rest will follow, right?
Yeah, exactly right. You have to build that relationship with whomever you're talking to, right? Whether that's the CIO, whoever it may be.
Yeah.
But you're not going, when you reach out to a healthcare organization, right, you're not selling to the organization first, you're selling to the person. So yeah.
Right. Great perspective. Let's talk about acquisitions because you've been through a couple of them. So, Infosys acquired Optimum for 465 million, a deal that's now closed and public. Optimum's brand is staying intact as an Infosys subsidiary. So you're running marketing for a company that is simultaneously completing one of the largest acquisitions in healthcare IT history and trying to integrate into a $20 billion global enterprise. So that causes questions on the parts of employees and clients and partners, right? So what does marketing actually look like inside an organization going through a major acquisition? And what's maybe the one thing you are fighting hardest to protect? And I'd love
Yeah.
your
So
perspective since you've been
I've
in
been
two
through
of them.
three now,
So
right? I've
yeah.
been through three acquisitions. So let's take a step back. Like I said, ultimately, Keen was NTT Data acquired Keen, and at that point, we knew that the brand was going away. So we started, right away. It was Keen, an NTT data company. And within 12 months, Keen was gone and we were just NTT data. So that was more, let's make sure we're doing everything right and get integrated in, because I ran the marketing for the small little division. I reported to somebody in my division, but had a dotted line to the CMO and NTT Data Americas corporate. It was a whole different type of story, right? Then, 2020, Achieve Partners purchased a controlling stake in Optimum Healthcare IT. That didn't change anything with the brand or anything like that. That brought us our main offering from them, which was Optimum Career Path, which is an apprenticeship program. So now we're looking at Infosys, and they acquire us, and there's a lot to unpack there. I am working with a colleague of mine who is the head of healthcare marketing for Infosys. Um, and they're coming down here to Jacksonville next week, and we have 2.5 days of marketing meetings, right? So they are a great company so far. Everybody I have met, everybody I've talked to is fantastic. I have yet to meet somebody there who has anything less than 18 years of experience. So they have a very strong culture that people very much like, and they stick around. But it is definitely a learning curve, right? This is a type of acquisition. It's kind of a combination of ones I've been a part of, where our brand is indeed staying intact. We've added a nice little tagline to our logo, an Infosys company. And we are going to be a US based subsidiary that is the entrance into the provider market for Infosys, because they, kind of going back to brand expansion, they bring us a lot more of offerings in certain areas, right? So specifically in ServiceNow, specifically in cloud, and then from our managed services piece, we can now offer more things to our clients. From a marketing perspective, it's like, okay, you're going to this show. We tend to go, but we don't have a big presence like you. So now we have a joint go to market we're starting to build out, right? For larger shows like the specific AWS, the specific Microsoft, the ServiceNow show. Health is another big show that we've never gone to. So we're still kind of feeling it out. Infosys that does a lot of acquisitions, and they have a playbook. So while my creative director could have added an Infosys company to our logo, it's part of their playbook to do that. So they gave us our logo, right? And then just kind of understanding how everything flows in, right? We get opportunities for new MarTech stack and more programs and so forth. I'll get access to a bench of people that I can pull in to help my team when we're just overwhelmed with work to do. There's a lot of education on our side to their side. Infosys is an AI first company. So there's a lot of AI content that's going to help the organization as a whole. There's a lot to unpack. Right now, I've been focusing on getting our logos updated and getting our collateral updated, making sure that individually inside the organization, it's medial work, right? Your email signature is up to date. Make sure that any document you send out has the correct logo on it. We're starting there. That's the low-hanging fruit. And then we move into, hopefully next week, some deeper conversations around, here are our brand guidelines. Here are your brand guidelines. We need to integrate those together to make sure that we are meeting the standards of Infosys with our logo and our brand. Events is a big piece that's going to be coming up. And then, like I said, a lot of education around the organizations within healthcare IT that they may never have worked with, may not even know who they are, but now want to learn about and see how they can get involved. Right. So it is definitely a lengthy process. It will probably take the rest of the year to get everything integrated from a marketing perspective, to work with Infosys to put together what that combined go-to-market strategy looks like and how it behaves. And just understand that my team, like my RFP and bid writer, who her direct contact is for joint RFPs, right? Simple things like that. But it's definitely a process. It's definitely a little overwhelming, that's for sure. And then from a client perspective, right before the acquisition was made public, I had worked with my CEO and my president to put together messaging. So we had an FAQ document for our sales team. I had pre-written some emails they could send out for the salespeople. I had pre-written emails that our leadership could send out. Um, we went deep into all that to be prepared. The day that it was announced, we had a town hall, and our CEO informed everybody of the excitement and all the new opportunities that'd be available to them from a growth perspective as an employee. Um, and we've gotten amazing feedback in the market from this. So many healthcare IT leaders have reached out and have said, um, you know, we're very excited with the new opportunities that you bring forth to us now. Uh, but it was a lot of communication, and I think we're still doing it. I think people still ask questions, and especially now that we're kind of updating the logo
Mm-hmm.
at various organizations or events and so forth, more questions come out from them.
Yeah.
But we have the talking points. I've done it enough already where I can, pretty much do it verbatim.
Uh-huh.
But it's a very exciting time around here for sure, not just for our employees, but also for our clients.
Yeah, exactly.
LinkedIn or social media has to drive people to the website to consume the content,
Mm-hmm.
right? And if you don't get the website right, then you won't be able to get your content right. So not only you have to go fix the website, you have to go fix your content. And if you don't have your CTAs right and your forms right and all the way people can contact you, again, it all goes back to the website, right? You can look at the website is really the heart of the whole organization when it comes to marketing.
Mm-hmm.
You have to get that first step right before you can go to the next step. And you have to get everything right there before you can go to the next step. And it just keeps expounding out. So that's why you got to take your time. You got to be methodical. And if something doesn't work, it doesn't work. You just have to go back and fix it. But before you move on, you have to fix it. You can't let it be broke as you keep expanding.
What about for those founders who have heard, well, I really don't need to hire a lot of marketing people. I can just use AI.
You're welcome to try. I look, you know, me personally, from a marketing perspective, right? This is not AI as a whole for an
Sure.
organization, but AI in marketing. Just like the advent of CRMs or CDPs or all these things that were going to revolutionize marketing. They did. They were a tool.
Mm-hmm.
And I look as AI as the same thing as a tool. Um, Nothing makes me cringe more when I read about organizations. Engadget was one of the first organizations, publications to say, we are now just going to have AI write all of our articles.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's no emotion behind those articles, right? There's no feeling behind it. There's no experience behind it.
Right.
And the best thought leadership that an organization can put out there are the experiences of their SMEs and projects they've done. And that adds depth to that content. And if you just use AI to create generic content, it's not going to resonate.
Mm-hmm.
You need that depth. You need that emotion.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm I've been doing, I've been on quite a few podcasts of late, and I keep saying it, and some people look at me with like this cringy face, and some people agree with me, but AI is a tool, just like, any other tool in marketing. It's a tool to help you do your job. So learn how to use the tool to enhance your job. It may speed you up, right? If you say, hey, we want to write content about this topic, we can go to AI and say, hey, give me 5 blog posts written at a 8th grade reading level of 500 to 800 words, yada, 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 yada. And I have those 10 drafts sitting out there, how many that you asked for. Then those get you over writer's block. And then you go back in and you edit those and so forth. So for us, our threshold is 10%. If we use an AI checker, and every piece of content that we write goes through that checker.
Mm-hmm.
And one, to make sure there's no plagiarism, but two, to make sure it's not AI written.
Yeah.
Right. So most of our content has about a 10% AI written score. It doesn't necessarily mean AI wrote it. There's just common words or sentences you put together that sometime will trigger that. So we use it as a tool, for a founder who is not sure if they need marketing and just want to use AI. My personal recommendation is I would reconsider that. at least hire one person, let them learn the tool and use the tool, because you need that emotion, you need that depth, you need that experience in your content in order for it to resonate with people who are going to read it. And I'll add, like, just for example, we launched a LinkedIn newsletter 2.5 years ago, almost 3 years ago now. And over the weekend, we just crossed over the 210,000 follower threshold on LinkedIn, but
Wow.
also just crossed over the 60,000 threshold of subscribers to our newsletter.
Yeah.
We would not get those numbers if our content did not resonate with our readers. And, we have a very broad scope of people who are our followers. And a lot of those are healthcare executives. And they don't want to read AI written content. They want to read emotion, depth, experienced content.
Well, Larry, this has been one of the most commercially rigorous conversations I've had on this show, so thank you for that. For our
Thank you for having
listeners
me.
who want to follow your work or connect with you, where should they go?
I would always say hit me up on LinkedIn. That's where you can find me. If you want to check out the Optimum Healthcare IT website, it's optimumhit.com. And of course, we have our very robust LinkedIn there as well. So that's where I live pretty much most of my life, other than at home, is on LinkedIn. So
Great. And to our Think Small listeners, if today's conversation changed how you think about what your chief marketing officer should be doing, or how to use AI, maybe not just as tools, but to build more of a comprehensive AI operating system in marketing, or maybe just gave you one framework for building a brand that survives an acquisition, please share this with someone who needs to hear it. We'll see you all next time. Thank you so much, Larry, for your time.
thank you so much.
Welcome to the Think Small podcast, hypergrowth for small businesses. So, what's slowing you down?